Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome. So good to see you guys. Welcome all of you here watching online, whether you're watching around the world somewhere or you're here locally. We're glad to have you with us. Thank you guys for being here. Look at all of you here in the room. You're looking good. Lean over to somebody and tell them, hey, you look way better than last week. Don't do that. Just kidding. Do me a favor, though. If you're watching with some people online or you're here in the room, we want everybody to feel welcome and wanted here. So this is an all play. Even if you're new, help us out with this. Reach over to two people and tell them, hey, I'm really glad you're here, to say it like you mean it. If you're watching alone, welcome. I'm really, really glad that you're here. All right. Just before I jump into the message, a bunch of you have been asking me over the last couple of weeks, and I know a bunch of you have been praying for me. I had a bike fall like a month ago and went down in Murphy, actually. Last time I was up here, I was kind of like, I'm feeling much better. I didn't break any bones. I didn't have a concussion. Thank you for your prayers about that. I will say, when you hit concrete, it doesn't move. And I actually, when I started going down, I had this split-second thought of, this is really going to hurt, and it did. But I'm feeling way, way better, way better. Been back on my bike and feeling good. So thanks for your prayers and concern from many of you. We're in a series called Flip the Script. And we've been doing this series several weeks now. We're going to the Beatitudes, which the Beatitudes are the opening preamble to Jesus' longest recorded message, teaching, sermon that he ever did. In fact, my perspective, it's probably the greatest speech, sermon, message, talk you would ever read or listen to in your entire life. It's in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. I encourage you to go there if you've never spent any time there. Man, if you ever wonder, what is Jesus all about? Spend time in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount. It's his longest recorded message, and it only took about 20 minutes to deliver, which should say something to people like me and Jake. But anyway, it's really incredible. It's so impactful and so amazing and so applicable to our lives, so I hope you'll engage it. But the Beatitudes are the opening preamble. As I said, they're kind of Jesus is laying out the core values of his kingdom, the core values of what he's all about and what's important to him. And he talks about these 8 different blessings. He says, if you do this, you'll be blessed. You do this, you'll be blessed. And a lot of them are things that we read at first, we're like, I'm not sure I really want to do that. It's until you understand it, it's kind of like, I'm not sure I really want to engage that. And a lot of people have even told us during this series that, in fact, my own mother, by the way, my own mother, 84 years old, been in church her whole life, and she said, whenever I got to the Beatitudes, I would just skip it, because I didn't understand it. And so I'm so glad you guys are talking about it, because I didn't understand it at all. And a lot of people have said things like that during this series. So if you've missed any of it, I hope you go back and listen. But today, we're into one that when you read it on the surface, it sounds awesome. When you dig into it, you're like, I'm not sure. It's the one about being peacemakers. It's Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. So if you got a Bible, you can flip over there, or if you got a device or whatever, it'll also be on the screen. But here's what it says. This is Jesus speaking. And he says, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. That word blessed, we've talked about a lot in this series. It's from the Greek. And the reason we go back to the Greek is not because Jesus spoke Greek. He would have been speaking Aramaic. But when they wrote down what Jesus said, it would have been written in Greek, because that was the language of the empire. And so the Greek language that we translate the Bible from is the word makarios there, blessed. It means to be blessed. It means to be happy. It means to be envied. You guys all know what envy is, right? Everybody knows what envy is? It's like when you mow your yard and then you look at your neighbor's yard and it still looks better than yours. That's envy. Pretty much anytime you get on social media, that's called envy. That's envy. He says, to be envied are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now, that word peacemaker is an interesting word, and it again, going back to the original, it comes from a Greek word, Irena, which sounds like a Russian woman's name, but it's not. Irena, it's a Greek word, and it literally means to make peace or establish harmony. How many of you love a good harmony? Anybody with me? There was some harmony up here, the vocalists up here today. Harmony is when you have different things coming together to make something that sounds better than it would have apart. That's what harmony is. I'm going to date myself. My favorite harmonizers, my favorite band of all time, you guys okay if I date myself? Is the Eagles. I mean, anybody got that peaceful, easy feeling right now? You know what I'm talking about? I mean, those guys could harmonize, could they not? They were they were so great at harmonizing. In fact, I don't know if we're going to be able to play it, because I had to do Discovery 101 right before this, and I'm not sure we got it all lined up. Can we try to play? There's this video I found online. Like the Eagles, you know, they were in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, and so there weren't a lot of video of them even performing, but there certainly wasn't a lot of video of them practicing. This is a little video I found online of the original Eagles practicing backstage before they go on stage getting ready. You guys ready for this? All right, let's see if we can play it.
There are stars in the southern sky, southward as you go. There is moonlight and moss in the trees. Down the 7 bridges roll.
Now, is that good or what? I'm just saying. Give me the Eagles a hand. Anybody give the Eagles a hand? Now, listen, if you don't know who the Eagles are, Google it or ask your grandmother. All right? So you'll find out. It'll be there. You'll find it. So this word here that Jesus used, it means to come into harmony, but it's the Greek word for the Hebrew word shalom. You ever heard the word shalom? Everybody say shalom. Shalom means to be at peace. The word picture of the word shalom is something broken that gets rebuilt. Like a broken wall is not in shalom, but when it's put back together, it's in shalom. A broken relationship is not in shalom, but when it gets put back together, it's in shalom. It's in peace. Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, those who bring people back together, for they will be called children of God. Now, that you can see when we talk about that language, you can see why Eugene Peterson, who translated the Message version of the Bible, he translated it this way. Let's look at that. Can we put that on the screen? Look at what he said. He said, you're blessed to be envied, happy, blessed to be envied when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. Let's pray and we'll talk about it. Father, thank you so much for loving us. Thank you for calling us to yourself. Thank you that you've called us to be relationship reconcilers, those who bring people together rather than pushing people apart. God, we pray that you would help us to be people who build bridges rather than break them down. God, would you help us to be peacemakers in our world? Please speak to our hearts today. And I pray that every word that's from me would fall to the ground dead, and every word that's from you would pierce our hearts and change our lives. In Jesus' strong, life-changing name, amen. How many of you love bridges? Anybody kind of fascinated with bridges? Like anybody? Anybody? Just me? Yeah, a few people. I am fascinated by bridges. I mean, I really am. I love bridges. Like you see bridges, and the first thing I think of is, how did they do that? How did they do, how did they get across there without everybody dying? You know what I mean? How did they do that thing? And then once they're done, you're like, that is magnificent. I mean, there's some magnificent bridges in the world. I'm just going to show you a few pictures of some of my favorite bridges of places Susan and I have been. Let's look at that first one up on the screen. Anybody recognize that one? That's in Colorado at the Royal Gorge. If you've ever been out on that bridge, you look down and it's like, I mean, it's scary. You know what I mean? But look at that thing. It's just like, oh, we're to the next one now. So anybody know this one? Anybody know this one? Some of you are saying London Bridge, which a lot of people mistake it for that. It's actually the Tower Bridge in London. It's a magnificent bridge. I love it. That just looks like London, doesn't it? I don't know. Even if you've never been there, it's like, that's London. Look at this next one to see if you know this one. Anybody know this one? It's right here in Dallas. It's the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge here in Dallas. I'm so glad they built a pretty bridge for once in Dallas. It just makes the skyline so much better. You'll all know this next one. Look at this next one. The Golden Gate. I'll tell you a quick story about the Golden Gate Bridge. So Susan and I were out there during sabbatical in 2021, and she wanted to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm like, okay, it's 1.5 miles across the bridge. I'm like, okay, we'll walk across the bridge. We get to the other side of the bridge. And I'm like, that was nice. And let's call an Uber. And because I'm married to Susan Spurgeon, we did not call an Uber. We walked back across the bridge after we had already walked across the bridge. And anyway, she's crazy. But this is my favorite bridge. This is the last one. Let's put it. My favorite one is the last one. Anybody know that bridge? That is in Florence, Italy. It's the most fascinating bridge in Florence, Italy. It's known in the Italian. I can't say it in Italian, but it's the old bridge. They call it the old bridge because they don't know when it was built. Sometime back during the Roman era, they built this bridge. Our bridges can't last 60 years, by the way. Just a side note. I don't understand that. With all our technology, the Romans built bridges that still work. Anyway, this bridge is so cool. Look at those buildings on it. People used to live there, and they would have little shops that you would walk through the shops, and they would live and have their little shop there. There's still shops there. So if you ever go to Florence, you got to go to this bridge and walk through, and there's shops there, and it's really, really cool. Bridges are awesome. They're amazing. And they're almost kind of romantic in a way. We romanticize bridges. But the reality is, what bridges do is bridges bring things together that would otherwise be divided. They bridge the gap. That's why they're called bridges. They bridge the gap. And bridges have to get comfortable with footings on both sides of a divide, and they have to be willing to be walked on and driven on. This is what bridges do. They're magnificent, they're beautiful, and they're like Jesus said, they're blessed, they're to be envied in a way. It's like, whoa, a bridge, that's amazing, that's incredible, that's a bridge, that's awesome. But bridges have to be comfortable with footings on both sides of a divide, and they have to be willing to be walked on and driven on. And Jesus says, I want you to be peacemakers, bridge builders in your life. Why would Jesus say such a crazy thing like, hey, when you're a peacemaker, man, you're blessed. And not only are you blessed, but people will look at you and say, man, that's a child of God. That person looks like our Father in heaven. Well, let's put it in the context of Jesus' world of his day and what was going on in Jesus' time. In Jesus' world was marked by certain things. I think we have a little list. Can we put it on the screen? The world of Jesus was marked by political and religious strife, wars, violence, racial tensions, economic challenges, sexual exploitation, a few haves, and a whole bunch of have-nots. I don't know about you, but does that list sound familiar to you at all? I mean, let's do a little exercise here. Let's change the title. Like the title of that list was Jesus' World. Let's change the title. Let's go to the next slide. My world, your world, our world, is marked by, it's the same list, guys. Our world is marked by political and religious strife. Are we polarized or what in our world? Unbelievably polarized. Wars, violence. Guys, our world is on fire many places around the world. Many places around the world is just on fire. Racial tensions, we have any of that? Yes, we have that. Economic challenges, absolutely. Can anybody say inflation? Sexual exploitation. I had the honor of emceeing the fundraising event last night for Hope's Gate, which is a nonprofit serving people who've been exploited all around the world. Do you guys realize there are more slaves on the planet today than there ever been in human history? And a few haves and a whole bunch of have-nots. Blessed are the peacemakers, the bridge builders, for they will be called children of God. These are Jesus' words, not mine. This is what he's calling us to. And if you don't get anything else out of this message today, I want you to get this one thing. Some of you want to write this down or take a picture of it or whatever you want to do. But this one thing, you must get this. And it's simply this. When you sign up to follow Jesus, you are not signing up to be a divider. You are signing up to be a uniter. And I cannot, let me say it this way, it breaks my heart, and I believe it breaks the heart of God when I see so many people who claim to be followers of Jesus who are bringing more division than they are unity in the world. Social media, politics, religion, all the things that we who claim to be followers of Jesus lean toward division rather than uniting people and bringing them together. And Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, the bridge builders, for they will be called children of God. To be called a child of God means you look like your Father. You're looking like God himself. When you embrace bridge building, when you embrace bringing people together, when you embrace taking things that are separate and harmonizing them into something that's more beautiful than it was by itself, you look like your Father in heaven, Jesus says. That's what he's calling us to. Those are the kind of people that he's calling us to be. The Apostle Paul talked about this in 2 Corinthians 5. He said, for God was in Christ reconciling. Everybody say reconciling. Reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. And he gave us, those of us who would say we're followers of Jesus, he gave us this wonderful message, or other versions say ministry, of reconciliation. Say it with me one more time, reconciliation. This is what we've been called to. And yet for many people, again, who claim to be followers of Jesus, we tend to do the exact opposite. We divide people rather than uniting people. See, what is the difference between a peacemaker and a peace breaker? Peacemakers and peace breakers. Let me just differentiate those from each other real quickly so we actually know what we're talking about. Peacemakers build others up. Peace breakers tear others down. Peacemakers seek common good. What do we have that we're united about? What do we have that's in common? Because probably in most situations in your life, even people that you struggle with, you have more in common with them than you have different from them. Peacemakers focus on what we have in common. Peace breakers seek differences, focus on what's different than what we have in common. Peacemakers believe the best. Peace breakers believe the worst. Peacemakers choose, everybody say choose. Choose to forgive. Do you know that every time you forgive, it's a choice? I have never felt like forgiving in my life. Because if I feel like it, I don't need to. That's the whole point, right? But peacemakers choose to forgive. Peace breakers choose to hold on. Hold on to offense. Hold on to wrongs. Hold on to bitterness. Hold on to strife. Hold angst against other people. Peacemakers unite people. Peace breakers divide people. When you look at that list, how many of you would say, man, I'd rather be a peacemaker than a peacebreaker? Anybody with me? Anybody with me? This is what Jesus has called us to. This is what he's inviting us into, to be bridge builders, to be peacemakers. This is what he invites us into, but it takes us choosing it because it doesn't come natural for most of us. Because it's so easy to focus on what's different than what do we have the same. It's so easy to focus on where we've been hurt or offended or we don't like something or I don't like this or they're different from me, so I don't understand. I don't get their... That's where we go because we don't understand or we don't like that or we have a different opinion, and so we become peace breakers rather than peacemakers. I've had the privilege in my life of not only getting to engage this in my own personal life, because we all get to engage either being a peacemaker or a peace breaker in our own personal lives and our own personal relationships. But I've also had the privilege of doing this with leaders in different kind of organizations around the world and helping people come back together who've been divided and people who thought they could never be in the same room together again, and seeing them sit down at the table together and focus on what they have in common and work through difficult things and to see forgiveness come. I have the privilege of being raised by a dad who I watched do this throughout his career all around the world in different situations. He sat down with Fidel Castro one time, of all people, who he had a whole lot of things that he didn't have in common with, but just sat in that moment of, man, we're going to find common ground here. And if you want to be a peacemaker, there's certain things that you have to embrace in your life. And I want to mention some of those that have been the most helpful for me in my life. And I think it'll help you, whether it's at home or at work or school or on a team or whatever you're doing. Man, there's so many times in our friendships, in our marriages, in our relationship with our kids, our relationship with our parents, where we need peacemaking, and certainly in our careers and wherever we're going, whatever we're doing. So I want to mention some things that have been super helpful for me. So I hope that will be helpful for you. Here's the first one. If we're going to be peacemakers, number one, you got to make peace with your past. You got to make peace with your past. Because what happens to us is if we want to bring peace into other situations. If we haven't made peace with our own past, all that strife and all that difficulty and all that unforgiveness and all that struggle and all that pain is going to come into every relationship in your life with you, until you make peace with your past. I'll just give you an example of what I'm talking about. Here at New Hope, we have we reach a lot of people who either are completely unchurched, or a lot of other people who have been part of churches or part of religious situations, and they are what we term church damaged. It's a term we made up years ago, and other people use it now too, but we made this term up because we had so many people who were coming from, they had some kind of religious background, but it had been very negative, it had been difficult, they had been hurt, there had been some very bad things that happened, or maybe they had been raised by parents who were really, really religious, but not very relational. And so they come out of that, and they would come to New Hope and find a safe place, and this still happens. We love it when this happens. They come to New Hope and find a safe place, and they begin to get healed up and restored and refund faith in their relationship with God, and it's really amazing to watch that happen. It's a really, really cool process, and it's beautiful, but here's some things you need to know about that. Number one, although we strive to be a safe place, we're not a perfect church. Which means, and the reason that's true is because we're full of imperfect people, right? Which means you're going to have interactions with people, and sometimes they're going to rub you the wrong way here too. In fact, I always tell people, if you're looking for the perfect church, you're not going to find it. And if you do, don't join it, because it won't be perfect anymore, right? So that's the way that works. But we're going to struggle. We're going to have rubs with people, and because we're all imperfect people, you're going to go to a life group and somebody's going to say the wrong thing. You're going to be like, I'm done. And you got to choose at that moment, I'm going to be a peacemaker or I'm going to be a peace breaker. And we have to make those choices all along the way, here at church, at work, school, whatever we're doing. And so because we strive to be a safe place like that, sometimes people can get fooled into thinking, oh, this is perfect, and then something imperfect happens, and it's like, ah. The other thing you need to know is when you come into a new space, if you bring your past with you, you're never going to get past your past. Let me say it this way. You can't have peace from the past until you own your piece of the past. You with me? Those pieces are spelled different. I hope you noticed that. I can't have peace from the past until I own my piece of the past. And we've all got pieces in our past, don't we? Now, if you're a kid and you've been hurt or abused, neglected or something like that as a kid, you don't have anything to own there. That's not on you. But as an older teen, an adult, you have relationships with people and you have broken relationships with people. And because that person is broken and you're broken, there's always something for both people to own, isn't there? It's like we always say, if you have a relational conflict, there's 3 stories. There's your story, there's their story, and there's the actual story. And because we all make mistakes in relationships, and we have broken relationships in our life, we have to actually own our part of it if we're ever going to get past it. Even if it's just a little bit, even if your part is only 10%, you got to own 100% of your 10%. Otherwise, you're going to carry it into the next relationship with you. Just one example from my own life. When we started New Hope, I was one of those church-damaged people. Because when Susan and I moved back from Asia, we went to work at our home church, and the pastor there, the leader there, had a vision for starting a new church, and wanted me and Susan to do it. And what I told Susan on the plane ride on the way home was the last thing I want to do is be a church planter, famous last words. A few years later, I found myself planting this New Hope, starting this church. But what happened in the interim was, so we went back, they said, we got this vision to start a church, we want you to do it. The problem was once we started doing it, they didn't like that very much. Like they said, gather people, and we gathered the wrong people, I guess. And there was a lot of strife and a lot of things said. And as a result of that, the narrative from that church for 20 years was that Keith Spurgeon split our church, and New Hope was a split off of that church, and I was a church villain. And it was really painful. Every time I heard that story, it was like a knife in my heart. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they saying that for, Until one day, the Spirit of God got a hold of me, and he said, hey, Spurgeon, you got something to own in that. And I went back to that whole event, and I realized, I was young. I was early 30s. I was young, I was arrogant, I was proud, I was so full of myself, and I was so, man, I can do this better than the way I didn't say that out loud, but I'm sure it came across in my attitude and the way I approached things, and I could have done that whole process so much better and been so much more of a unifier rather than saying, hey, you asked me to do it, I'm doing it, adios amigos. I could have done that so much better and brought so much more peace and less strife and division in that situation, and I was able to own that and go back and say, oh my gosh, and reconcile with that pastor and all that stuff. And not too long after that, a few years later, this was a few years ago, that church got a new pastor. He and I became friends. He heard the stories of what was said. He knew it wasn't true. And so listen to this, guys. This is how God works. When we own our past, we get peace from the past. So what happened was that pastor called me one day out of the blue, and he said, hey, Keith, me and the leadership team, we want to bless New Hope. We know that we've been speaking, the church, he said, I haven't, but the church has been speaking negative things ever since you guys launched. We're going to give you guys $15,000 to buy a new soundboard for your sound system, which we just got it about 6 months ago because of COVID, and it took a year and a half to get it in. But anyway, we want to buy this new soundboard for you so that the words of life that come out of that sound system overpower the words of death that we've been speaking over you guys for 20 years, and we want you to forgive us and let go of that. Can we give God a hand for that? That's amazing. And I don't know this for sure, but I believe that if I hadn't owned my piece of the past, that part never would have happened. Number one, make peace with your past. Number two, make peace with your people. Make peace with your people. Guys, unforgiveness will destroy every relationship in your life. You have unforgiveness towards somebody, you're going to take that into the next relationship. But when you own your piece of the past and you make it right with your people, you start to have empathy for people. That's going to help you be a peacemaker rather than a peace breaker. And then lastly, number three, make peace with your faith. Make peace with your faith. And I'm going to finish with this. Some of you who are hearing my voice right now have been around here a while, and you've never made that commitment to follow Jesus and to make him the leader of your life. And I'm just going to tell you something. You and Jesus can't both be God in your life. At some point, you got to decide who's in charge. At some point, you got to make peace with God and say, God, you're going to be first place. I'm not going to be the leader anymore. You get to be in charge. And guys, man, when God gets to be in charge of your life, you not only get peace with him, but you get a desire in your heart to be at peace with others and to be a peacemaker rather than a peace breaker. Can we pray? Jesus, thank you so much for loving us. Thank you that you're the ultimate peacemaker. And right now, I just want to encourage you, if you want to give your life to Jesus today, can I just encourage you, just tell him in your own heart and mind, he made you, he can hear you, just tell him, Jesus, I need you. I need you to change me from the inside out. I need you to heal me. I need your forgiveness. I receive your forgiveness. Thank you for what you did for me on the cross, reconciling me to God. And I choose you today. And if you want to be a peacemaker, you're like, man, I want more of this. I want to be more of a peacemaker rather than a peace breaker in my life. Can I just encourage you to open your hands right where you are? If that's you want to be more of a peacemaker than a peace breaker, just open your hands right where you are. And Spirit of God, we invite you to invade our lives. Make us bridge builders. Make us peacemakers at work, at home, at school, at church, online. God, would you make us peacemakers? Wherever we go, whatever we're doing, help us to build bridges, God. Help us to bring people together rather than pushing them apart. Do something amazing in us so you can do something incredible through us. I pray that this church would be known as a people who build bridges. They would be known in our community and around the world as a people who bring people together. In Jesus' strong, life-changing name, amen. Thanks, guys. Jill's going to let you go. Have a great week. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Keith. That was great. And what's so cool about this week is we actually have an opportunity to go out into our community and be peacemakers and to bring people here. So this Thursday, we're going to be at Boo on Ballard. We're going to be passing out 3,000 hot dogs and water and cotton candy, and it's a whole lot of fun. And so we do still have some spots available for you guys to come and serve with us. It's really a great time. You get to rub shoulders with people here that you've never met before and make some new relationships within our walls. And then again, invite our community in. And it's just a great opportunity. So I want to encourage you, you can go online on our events tab and there's a sign up there. So don't miss out on that opportunity. And also, if you ordered a shirt and you have not picked it up, they're going to be out on the patio today. So don't forget to stop by there and grab your shirt. And lastly, if you want to help us keep doing this on Sunday mornings and keep reaching our community and just our following around the world, you can do that by partnering with us in giving. And you can do that online, you can text, or there's some boxes as you exit. So we love you guys. We hope to see you Thursday. If not, we'll see you next Sunday.